Holiday tips and fun facts from Paul, Kristen, and Dexter at Total Wine & More.
There's something celebratory about Bubbles. Our ridiculous selection of champagne and sparkling wines will make the holidays pop.
Who couldn't use a friendly wine elf? I can help you find the perfect bottle at just the right price.
Deep frying a turkey this year? A rich and earthy Chateau Neuf de Pop would make an interesting pairing.
Whether you're entertaining or just bringing the wine, we'd love to share our always low prices and ridiculous selection with you this holiday. Now offering same-day delivery at TotalWine.com. Cheers!
Right now, when you come in and switch to T-Mobile, you get the amazing iPhone 11 Pro on us with iPhone XS trade-in.
Aren't these mountains majestic? Joe, are you even looking?
I'm posting these amazing pics I took with my iPhone 11 Pro. It has 3 cameras.
Whoa, those pics are amazing. And you have service too?
T-Mobile, their newest signal goes farther than ever before.
Then you can look up whether these are bear tracks, right?
Or we could just run.
Come to a T-Mobile store today and get iPhone 11 Pro on us with iPhone XS trade-in. And right now, get 4 lines for just $30 a line with AutoPay. Switch today.
Contact us if you cancel or credits may stop and full price due, plus taxes and fees via 24 monthly credits for well-qualified customers with qualifying service and finance agreement. 0 down with trade-in plus $31.25 times 24 months. Pre-credit price $999.99. 0% APR while supplies last.
This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA.
Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warrenshaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. We have just hit that quarter mark of the NBA season. And if you were to ask me to guess where teams would be, I would probably then now be shaking my head, quite much like how you all are right now, because the unpredictability of the NBA is fully on tilt. And I'm not just talking about the LA Lakers and the LA Clippers. That's a foregone conclusion. But there's many more other things that are going on right now in the NBA, which leads us to a great topic of conversation. So let me go ahead and roll out the red carpet to my right-hand man, www.shawsports.net, Big Kahuna PNC, my brother from another mother, Mr. Warren Shaw, repping out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Holla back at me, Mr. Shaw. Are you...
Holiday tips and fun facts from Paul, Kristen, and Dexter at Total Wine & More.
The custom of bumping glasses with the cheers came from old Rome. When in Rome, cheers!
A pork crown roast with cranberry stuffing deserves a ripe, fruit-forward Cabernet from Paso Robles. Let me help you find the perfect bottle.
Looking for the right wine for a meaningful gift? Consider me your wine concierge.
Whether you're entertaining or just bringing the wine, we'd love to share our always low prices and ridiculous selection with you this holiday. Now offering same-day delivery at TotalWine.com. Cheers!
You running this episode with me like Ghostface Daytona 500 style, bro?
It's one of those classic joints there, my G. And of course, you know, I'm always riding with you, especially when we're talking about the NBA, baby. You know, I think this is just one of the things that our fans, listeners would get a kick out of is, you know, love your intro. The NBA has been so unpredictable that we're basically having to change our show format minutes before coming on air, because it's just the topics continue to just change, and the information that we get and just how this season has unfolded has been just so uniquely interesting in a way that I think fans can truly appreciate. But as always, salute to all the fans, listeners of NBA Baseline. I'm excited about the quarter poll conversation we're going to be having and talking about the Atlanta's atrocities a little bit as well too, man. But I can't wait to jump into it.
Now, there is one thing that is predictable, Shaw, that we can acknowledge. The officiating has just been horribly consistent, right? Like consistently horrible and horribly consistent. It's just, I mean, my goodness, man, like serious. And then you add on this nuance of challenging calls, which then just, listen, I don't know how, I'm glad I have Apple protection, because my iPad, you know what I'm saying? I will be doing frequent tests to see how far it can fly across a room when I watch, you know, your words, atrocities. Yeah, some of these officiating atrocities that are taking place during the course of during the course of some NBA games. But that will be a conversation for a later date. As we said before, man, our breakdown convo, we're just around the quarter mark of the season, and we're going to kind of highlight some trends, things that we noticed, some things that Shaw and I made our early season predictions on. Were we on the mark? Were we off the mark? of course, this is like shameless plug for you guys to listen to our previous episodes. But more than anything, this is expected because this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. So it's always good to gauge where some of these teams are and where they're trending. So that will be our topic of conversation for the breakdown. And then in a little bit, we will be talking about the Atlanta Hawks. I know someone between the two of us was very high. I mean, it was almost like he had a McDonald's house set up for them, for all the young sons that he had coming out of the ATL. We ain't naming no names, but one of us had some high hopes for this team, and they are sorely letting down one of us here. And so I cannot wait to see if whether or not he takes him out to the back of the shed, put some of these kids on detention right now. So we'll be talking about what's been going on with the Atlanta Hawks and why they're struggling so badly. Once again, we appreciate you and yours for tuning into The Baseline. Be sure to get at my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA or get at me at GameFace Lee. The show's Twitter handle at NBA Baseline. You know where to find us. We're available on all the major platforms. As always, whatever platform you use, look for the Baseline NBA podcast, add us to your playlist, kick back, relax, and allow us to be your go-to resource discussing all things happening in the association. You know how we do, you know how we roll. Let's get it started with the breakdown.
Time to break it down.
Time now for the breakdown. Callie Warren Shaw, Baseline NBA podcast. And we are just around the quarter mark of the NBA season. And you know, it's funny how we usually get to this part. Like a lot of people have always been at this point where they're complaining about how the season is too long. But if you really think about it, it's only been like a month and a half. We've transitioned just before Halloween, and we're already close to the holidays, like Christmas holidays, and we're already at the quarter mark of an NBA season. So I'm just saying, I don't want to start getting on my soapbox or nothing. But for everybody that's out there complaining about how the season is too long, this, that, and the third, you would ache to be able to have this many NBA games being played in this time span and to already see that a quarter of this season has panned out with the chaos that has ensued. Shaw, I'm going to lean on you for this, man, to kind of roll us into this. I don't think we've expected a lot of some of the trends that we're seeing here so far for this quarter mark of the season, with the exception that we knew that the LA Clippers and the Los Angeles Lakers would pretty much be the proverbial 1 and 2 punch of the Western Conference. What are some of the other things that you have noticed already at this quarter mark of the season?
Well, if you don't mind, I'm actually going to start with the Lakers and in some aspect, not the fact that they are, they had a 10-game winning streak snapped over the course of the weekend, and the fact that they're good, but is their defense. Their defense is actually second in the league. I did not see that. I did not see the Lakers. Well, I knew they had some length and they had some, and you have all the conversation that comes into it. AD is going to hold LeBron accountable, blah, blah, blah. It's actually come to fruition. And the Lakers, their part of their hard start is grossly attributed to their defense and how good it's been in general. I also, I'm going to kind of jump around here a little bit as well. And I really
before you do that, Shaw, can I add some points to your thought process about what surprises everyone is that Showtime is not what they're doing on the offensive side of the ball. It seems like Showtime for the Lakers is what they do on the defensive side of the ball, and so it tells me two things. They really, really, really buy into Rick Vogel, because remember, one of the reasons why Frank Vogel, excuse me. One of the reasons why Frank Vogel has always been considered a top tier head coach is because of the work that he did in Indiana. And during those years, the Indiana Pacers were among the top 5 teams in the NBA defensively. And so you're seeing that already. And it surprises me that this Lakers team, who clearly want to run up and down the court, make everything literally like a highlight reel, has kind of clamped down and has put their attention to detail to the defensive side of the basketball this early outset, given the fact that you have a new head coach and you have a lot of new parts on this roster.
Yeah, and those are great points. Vogel deserves a lot of credit. Even Jason Kidd, being the assistant coach, we hadn't heard any dust up or drama from that. They've been almost a non-story completely. It's all about what LeBron having an MVP like seats in the AD, not quite having the massive season that people thought. he really has been Batman, or he's been Robin to LeBron's Batman, and not vice versa. So I think that's probably a little bit of an interesting story, but it doesn't matter. They're winning, and Vogel and Kidd have not gotten in the way at all. Like, you hear nothing about them. And the fact that their defense has been so good without, Avery Bradley from a good part of the season. Rondo missed some games as well too, and both of those guys can, play some pretty good defense, especially when it comes to getting the passing lanes and trying to standing up other guards, things of that nature. So this defense actually has the ability to get better as those two continue to get healthy, integrated into the overall scheme of what Vogel wants to do, ironically. So, shouts to the Lakers for them, man. They are really pushing forward in a positive direction. I got to start here as well too, or jump over to the East Coast. The team that I in the same region is in the Miami Heat, and the fact that they've been as good as they have been, to date. I think they're 14-5. They're
impressive win
home.
as well too. As we're recording this podcast, defeating the Brooklyn Nets. I watched the last part of that basketball game. Yeah. I was
10-0 run in the final 3-4 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. I was just very impressed with how composed this team is. And hey, listen, I'll take that egg. I've been very harsh on Jimmy Butler, who's been very quirky over the last couple of years with his approach to things, the way that he comes off. I didn't know whether or not he should be entitled or be ready, to take the reins of a basketball franchise that is, once had the touch of Crash Wade, Wade County and everything. But whatever he is doing, and I know part of it is symbiotically combined with what he, his relationship with Spoelstra, whatever they're doing, they are having a positive effect on this basketball team, and they're going out there and they're winning basketball games. And that just speaks volumes. I mean, to me, it kind of gives me a little bit of reassurance that I think the Miami Heat are going to be okay. And I definitely see a lot of that being because of, Jimmy Butler. So, you know what? I'll take that one. I'll put that egg on my face if I see this is how the Miami Heat is going to play, and the influence of Jimmy Butler's effect on those guys out there is what's helping to attribute to that.
Yeah, well, I'm going to touch on it a step further again. I think a lot of people want to point to Butler in that regard, but I think your first point about Spoelstra is probably really the key to this. He has masterful control of this roster and this team and what they ultimately want to do. It has been a little bit interesting where not everybody has been there at the exact same time. So we had Butler miss the first 3 games. Now we had Winslow out for multiple games with concussion. Derek Jones Jr., who they're also high on, has missed some games. Olynyk started the season a little bit wonky. We already know about the Dion Waiters situation. Pretty much everybody is now back, and now he's got to really figure out how these minutes are going to be disseminated.
But you know what, Shaw?
Go ahead.
As you say that with regards to the Dion Waiters, this to me is the difference between and let me just bring in this part, because here's a team that I think I'm a little surprised that is struggling as much as they are, the Brooklyn Nets, who just recently played the Miami Heat. These are two teams on the opposite ends of having a grip and control of what the season may entail and the expectations, for a team and its organization. You can see that even in this game, when I was watching it, Kenny Atkinson, I think, is pressing. And I think that what's not helping is a lot of the outside noise that has permeated now over the last few days because of the situation regarding Kyrie Irving. And I know we're going to touch a little bit about that later on in our coast to coast part. But what I'm saying is that you look at what's happened just recently with the Miami Heat. The only time now that we talked about the Dion Waiters thing is because a statement was made. All in between the time when this first was made mention of, or when it was released, the Miami Heat did an excellent job not making that the focal point where everything now attributes to whether or not this team struggles, to whether or not this team may go out and win games or lose games and things of that nature. Where other teams struggle, and I say that saying they're not able to separate what they do on the court from what's happening off the court. A team like Miami, as disciplined and as focused as they are right now, I think helps immensely, especially when it comes to voices in the locker room, who you should be listening to, who you buy into, who you feed off of, who you lean on. We're clearly seeing that right now as a comparison in what we see with Miami and the struggles that I think you are seeing right now with the Brooklyn Nets.
Well, again, I think let me just say this, my fandom kind of takes over here, especially being in the South Florida area where I'm programmed to not necessarily like the Miami Heat, but I have to respect their organization and what they're able to do in general, and I do. I'm fully bought into what they've been shoving down South Florida's throat for the last 7-8 years now. Heat culture. It truly is. And the way that they can protect players, the way that certain situations come out, but not to the detriment of the overall organization. Their PR, their management, everything about that organization is first class. And to me, they are right on par. Well, I know people don't like to say that per se, but they're right on par with the Spurs in terms of just how they handle things right now. And they have a proven track record of that. And again, this Heat organization is very good. And while I expected them to be a very competitive team this year and probably be, a 6 or 7 seed, they're right now in the top 3, and and who knows if they stay that high all year. But you're realizing now, I think 1 through 6 might be a lot closer in the Eastern Conference than we probably originally would have thought coming into the year. And Miami is a big reason and part of that.
All right, so now that we've kind of focused our attention, let's jump back over to the Western Conference. And you mentioned the team, just a moment ago, the San Antonio Spurs. I have to tell you, Shaw, at this quarter mark, I'm a little surprised that the Spurs are under 500 basketball team. I listen, I'm not saying that they should be a top 5 team. I'm not even saying that they probably would be a 6 or 7 seed right now. But to be 7-13 as we're recording this podcast, it troubles me a little bit, because now what I'm seeing is that I don't think Popovich coaching, Popovich savvy is going to help turn things around for this Spurs team to be able to compete in a way where even if they do make the playoffs, they probably will get knocked out in the first round. There's nothing about what I'm seeing from this basketball team, even with, getting back Dejounte Murray, even with White, I'm not seeing it yet. Now, maybe things can turn itself around, but this quarter mark, the struggles that I'm seeing from the San Antonio Spurs, both offensively and defensively, really, really concern me right now. And I didn't expect that, given the fact that what we said was, if Popovich can get the players that he needs back to be whole, they can be competitive. And right now, they're no better than the Pelicans. They're no better than the Memphis Grizzlies. They're only like a couple of games off of that pace. So even if we're saying that there may be 2 teams that might come out of the Southwest, it's basically the Houston Rockets, Dallas Mavericks, and then the rest of these other teams are left for dead. We would easily put the Spurs in that conversation, sometime last year, or even when we were talking about preseason show, but that's not the case with San Antonio.
Yeah, there's all kinds of struggles, and the rumor mills are starting to swirl in San Antonio for the first time in a very long time, where people want to see them tear this whole thing down. Maybe move LMA, move DeRozan somewhere. They obviously just re-signed gave DeJounte an extension, so he's not necessarily going anywhere. But the rest of those guys, I think everyone's up for grabs potentially. And then obviously with Pop, they're never going to fire Pop. He would just eventually step down. That organization's too much class and too much history, for something that egregious or almost in that way scandalous to happen to the Spurs organization. But they have been pretty disappointing, especially defensively. 25th right now in terms of their defensive rating. Still decent offensively, 13th. DeRozan's having an efficient year after a pretty slow start. Don't know what's happened to LaMarcus Aldridge's rebounding, but even with Murray, as you alluded to, he's still on a minutes restriction, so he's not even able to play the full games, and that's obviously impacting some of the things that they do. And then the supplemental parts, Forbes and Derek White and things of that nature. Again, nice guys, but these are not major impact players for the Spurs organization.
Do you want me to tell you what happened to LMA? Like I said, LMA got 1 foot out the door. I mean, like I said, we can go back to when he made the comments that he made, which, take it for what it's worth. I'm not saying that he said it. I'm just saying it was a very interesting time for him to basically give off the impression that he's literally checked out. When you're saying, it would be kind of cool, to go back to Portland or, get back with my man Dame Dollar. And, I'm just saying, I'll never tell a player what they should do or how they should, express their happiness, their happier times, or things that make them happy, right? But how you do it also is like a looking glass, in my opinion, about what your future really does look like to me when I hear these things. You know, it's the same thing that we were talking about with Anthony Davis, right? And at least with Anthony, he's got something supportive in his corner that will elevate him, that he has to be better, play better, because he asked for all of this. He asked for all of this pressure. Well, I think the same thing applies with LaMarcus Aldridge. And he did himself no favors by addressing anything in his previous stages of his career for him to now basically have him question, you know, the way that he plays right now for the current team that is paying him a boatload of money. They paid a boatload of money to take him from Portland, right? And so the fact that he's not lived up to that is just so disheartening to me. But I think it just kind of culminates to the whole reason why I say the San Antonio team is really, really struggling. And it's hard pressed for me to see that they're going to figure out a way to turn this around. Because even if they do, you can't buy into the idea that whatever turnaround they give you, they're going to be a legitimate threat with the other teams that are now representing the Western Conference.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all when it comes to San Antonio's overall season outlook right now. They do look pretty bad. We've seen them look bad in the last 2 years and wondered if they weren't going to make the playoffs. And while it's probably still too early to count them out in that regard, but the future for this team, just in terms of what that even means, making the playoffs and getting bounced in the first round, you know, if that happens in back-to-back seasons again, like that's just not what this Spurs team is used to. So at some point, you got to figure out a way to figure out how and what are we rebuilding around. And I don't know if the Spurs are ready to answer some of those hard questions just yet. I'm going to jump back over to the Eastern Conference and, you know, a team that I was kind of wrong about because I think I underestimated yet again, you know, the coaching acumen of Nate McMillan, and that's the Indiana Pacers. I was looking real Nostradamus, if you will, conspiracy-like in that first couple weeks where they were 0-4, 0-5 to start the season. I was like, I just don't see what's good about this Pacers team. And now, you know, since that time, they're at a mark of 12-7 as record. Tough loss over the weekend to the Philadelphia 76ers. But Malcolm Brogdon is, you know, in the minutes he's been getting, you know, plus minutes, he's been amazing. They found a way to continue to win. While Miles Turner doesn't do much for them outside of rebounding and blocking a couple of shots, Domantas Sabonis has been out there and doing everything for them, rebounding, scoring, passing, and it's been a great complement to what they need in the front court. TJ Warren coming on a little bit now as well, too. Jeremy Lamb has been a godsend for them. Had a couple minor injuries, has been in and out of the lineup a little bit, but the Pacers team has found a way to get back right on track. And great news with Oladipo starting his rehab assignments in the G League, so he could be back probably sometime this month. The Pacers team is now looking like could be a potential threat in the Eastern Conference.
I completely agree with everything you're saying. This Indiana Pacers team is a tough, hard-nosed basketball team, and the fact that Malcolm Brogdon is becoming a tier 2A scorer, I think is just going to add more for them. I think it also takes a lot of pressure off Domantas Sabonis for his ability to score the way that he does. So now you have like this triple threat if and when Oladipo comes back. But I will say this. I want to be very leery of people setting these expectations about Oladipo coming back and what he could do for this basketball team. I'm more so lean to the idea that Oladipo's return will be an inspirational boost before we start talking about his contributions for this basketball team offensively, defensively, is going to come into play. The last time that a lot of people started doing this stuff, and I'm not saying you're doing it, Shaw. I know you're bringing that up to indicate that it's a positive, it's a plus, whatever you get out of Oladipo. But I think there's been too much being made on the social media platforms about Oladipo's possible, when he does return, what you're expecting him to give this basketball team. If I'm Nate McMillan, I still have this team running through the engines that have made this team what they are right now until you are 100% confident that Oladipo can give you what I think you're asking him to give you. Because the last time that we saw something like this occur and it really backfire on a team, Gordon Hayward, Boston Celtics. And that's where I'm going to leave it at that. I know that Oladipo and Hayward are not the same as far as in athletic types and what they do in their positions and things, but I'm just talking about the expectations and the mindset when you have a star player come back from a gruesome injury. And there's nothing gruesome than, your ankle breaking, and there's nothing more gruesome than tearing your MCL, your ACL. So my whole thing is, whatever people are expecting, Indiana fan base, people who love Oladipo, you need to give this time. But the fact that he can be such an inspirational player for the guys, he's always there at the games, he's always leaving his mark, talking to the, as a true veteran. I think that is a positive. I think that is what's lent the idea that the Indiana Pacers, even without Oladipo, is such a dangerous basketball team, to your point.
Well, yeah, I'm going to echo those comments real quick as well, too. I think that the fact that Oladipo doesn't need to come back and be a savior is very key.
I don't think that would be the case if Brogdon has not elevated his game over the last couple of weeks like he has. I am seeing a trend for Brogdon to be one of those dudes that we didn't think was possible, but he is certainly, he's definitely convincing me that he wants to be a guy that's in, like, they're trying to form their own trifecta. And I see Brogdon elevating himself very slowly but surely into that conversation that he wants to be that core guy. It's not about the money, but more about what his play, what he brought coming over from Milwaukee, to your point.
Right. So again, not having to be a savior is a huge thing for Oladipo. Lamb is playing well even at the position itself. So it's not like, okay, we have a hole, like we're getting by, but we still have a hole at that two guard. Lamb has played, remarkably well. And the fact that Brogdon can play on or off the ball, I think is a key to what the Pacers team is ultimately going to do. So I agree, they'll definitely have the minutes restrictions and bring them along slowly, and then maybe around All-Star break you start ramping them up again for the kind of the stretch run of the season. But I don't think Oladipo needs to come in here and kill himself, because the Pacers are still pretty good without him going into what we've been talking about so far. A couple of other teams, or not necessarily teams, even just things I think I've noticed at the quarter pool here right now. I know we already talked about them, but I think we'd be remiss, to not talk about the play of the Charlotte Hornets in general, but more so Devontae Graham and just how great he's been. Again, I'm taken aback, just taken aback at how amazing he's been, for the Charlotte Hornets, and almost calling for people to get rid of Terry Rozier. I think is pretty amazing. 20 games or so into the season, but shouts to him and the improvement he's made to make the Hornets a competitive basketball.
Right. So, and that to your point, Shaw, this is exactly the reason why when people do stuff like that, they it bugs me to no end, and it aggravates me, because it almost in a way just tells me that they know nothing about basketball, which surprises me. But then again, it may not really surprise me, because I don't know. I can't. Let's put it like this. This Charlotte's fan base right now is not the Charlotte fan base that originated when they first were the Hornets. When you had, the Lonzo Mourning, Larry Johnson, Muggsy Bogues, and the Del Currys on your basketball team. I felt like there was a true understanding of, what a small market basketball team was going to have to do and the sacrifices it made to try and make itself relevant, albeit in this, this monstrosity of what was called the Eastern Conference at that time, right? So I don't understand what people are asking for here when they say, oh, Terry Rozier, we overpaid this dude. This guy should be on the bench, this, that, and the third. If your team right now is 8-13, where some people were predicting, and I'm not just talking about you, Shaw, but some people predicted that this was going to be one of the worst teams in the game, and you actually have a team that is very competitive, right? I mean, very seldomly do you see this team get blown out of basketball games. They've actually have won some come from behind games. I don't understand why the first thing that people are thinking of is saying that this guy has to be benched. This guy, should get traded. This guy should get released. It boggles my mind, bro. Totally boggles my mind.
I mean, that's just the nature of the game right now. They can look at the cost benefit. Graham's costed them like $2 million a year, or something like super cheap. Rozier's is a lot more than that. Practically 10 times that. So, I don't think it's bothering my young son Terry out there in Charlotte. They're still playing, competitive basketball. The losses are starting to pile up here a little bit, but they're still in every game, and I think that's the important thing. Although they did get blown up by Milwaukee over the course of the weekend. Are there any other players out there that maybe we haven't talked about in previous episodes that you want to kind of highlight, or maybe even some teams out there too that we haven't shown a little bit of love to at the quarter pool?
Well, yeah, definitely. If you were to ask me, Shaw, that Ryan Saunders has the Minnesota Timberwolves at above 500, and Terry Stotts is struggling with a team that he led to the Western Conference Finals to be at 500, would that surprise you?
Yeah, it would. And then that Melo,
the
finally
fact
on
that the
Portland,
Portland
and Andrew
Trailblazers
Wiggins is playing the best basketball of his life.
Right. Like so there's a couple of things that I guess we can kind of carve out from this, right? First of all, you made a mention of the Minnesota Timberwolves might actually be a little bit better than I think people are giving credit for. But again, what was highlighted is they're playing in a division where arguably there is definitely 3 teams that should be expected to come out of that division. So no matter how good the Minnesota Timberwolves might be, right, it may not be good enough that they be a participant in the playoffs. Now, again, it's only the quarter mark, but I don't think we were expecting the kind of play that we were getting from Minnesota at this early outset, because regularly the Minnesota Timberwolves have been a team that has struggled at the early outset of an NBA season. The Portland Trailblazers always struggle at the early outset of an NBA season, but normally by the quarter mark, they will have turned things around. And normally, even if the whole division is struggling, they will probably be the second or third best team, and then they make a run. They make this push where they run off 7 in a row, 8 in a row, and then they suddenly catapult themselves where they're among the top teams in the Northwest Division. I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer to our Portland heads, but 8-12 right now, and it's not like you're struggling because you don't have your core players. It's not like you're struggling because Dame Lillard is not scoring the basketball. Maybe CJ McCollum is certainly having a very slow start to the season. But whatever's going on right now in Portland, I think that you should be a little concerned, because the Denver Nuggets certainly are not going away. The Utah Jazz actually have a good record coming into this first quarter mark of the season. And so I think that that's going to add pressure for Portland whenever they decide to go on that run. Whenever they find their Daytona 500, they better start looking for it very quickly, because this division can get away from them very fast. And then just to add pressure on that, the Minnesota Timberwolves are saying, hey, we don't think we're a bad basketball team either. So now there's 3 other teams other than Portland who want to have a say in how this division gets played out. And the Oklahoma City Thunder, too. They're 7-11, bro. I told you. Chris Paul ain't going to let this team look embarrassing under his watch. And they're going to play like that in this division all season long, as long as he's still with that team.
Well, to Portland's credit, though, I mean, they have won 3 straight, so they were 5-12. Before we recorded them.
Maybe they're on that run that I'm talking about.
They might be, they might be in the midst of that run that you're talking about to get back in the mix of this. And then there are 2 teams in there that you still don't really quite know if they're for real. Minnesota being one of them, and they've been really good, obviously, because of the play of Andrew Wiggins, coupled with Karl Anthony Towns and others. But the Phoenix Suns also coming back to earth a little bit too after a hard start. Now, there are 2 games under 500 as we record. Sacramento kind of in the mix. Like, they're probably going to be about a 500 team all year. They're waiting for Bagley and Fox to get back. So I think Portland can probably catch one of those 3 teams. Can they catch all 3 and get into as high as 7? I don't know. We'll see if Melo can continue to play at the level that he's been playing at those last 2 or 3 games. But it has been interesting for Portland because, I think every year we wanted to count them out, and then we're like, all right, well, we've learned our lesson. We can't count them out. And now this might be the year that we actually probably should have did it. So we'll see. Again, still plenty of games to go here, and I think Portland is going to feel pretty good about themselves the way they've been playing. Dame is still obviously not 100% healthy. CJ's been playing a little bit better. Whiteside he's looked good in spurts, just coming off a 10-block game as well. So I think Portland is still going to be in the thick of this, and they're not going to be an easy team to play throughout the Western Conference the rest of the season at all.
Are you comfortable with what you're seeing in the Atlantic Division between the Raptors, Celtics, and the Sixers? Does it surprise you, I guess, that the Sixers aren't as dominant as I think we were saying that they I said that they really should be, but the fact that they are just kind of they're pedestrian, so to speak, right now. Does that surprise you?
Yeah, I think Philly's biggest issue is their overall shooting, and some of that stems from Simmons' inability or unwillingness to even shoot the basketball. But they're still a very good, if not elite, defensive team, especially situationally. But I think Philadelphia has some things that they can they can continue to work on again, especially when it comes to shooting the basketball and playing a little bit more through Embiid than we've seen thus far.
I'm kind of curious to ask you this question, Shaw, because me personally, I'm really just getting tired of the idea that, well, you know, when the 76ers lost Josh Reddick, they lost a lot of their shooting. And I don't disagree with that. They probably lost their best shooter, not necessarily a lot of their shooting. I'm just wondering, because remember, we've said this, and I'm not, you know, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to already put this out there that, you know, Cal is talking about, you know, hang them high on the coaches. But is this now becoming more realistic that Brett Brown is not putting these guys in the best position to be better and more effective in how they're scoring that basketball? In other words, they went and they still got shooters, right? And even if they are struggling, I'm just wondering, at what point do you start making the necessary adjustments to get them to start scoring? Right now, Shaw, they're averaging around 108 points per game, okay? I'm sorry, that's just not going to cut it, okay? It's not going to cut it. They need to be averaging at least 110, 111 at best. All right, that the Celtics can score the basketball better than the Philadelphia 76ers. And you arguably have one of, or, you know, two of, when they're playing in their element, two of the most dominant players, versatile players in the game, in Embiid and Simmons. Then you also have some pretty efficient scorers in Tobias Harris and Josh, you know, Richardson, give or take, right? So it isn't, and then you've got the best all-around guy in Al Horford. At least, you know, that's how it's always being presented. So it isn't as if this basketball team does not have players who could put the ball in the basket for days. The fact that they're not executing it to do it on a night in, night out basis concerns me more heavily about whether or not you can rely on this team to run with the rest of the other teams that've got thoroughbreds on their roster.
Well, I think, again, for me, it's not so much just the overall shooting. I think it's how they play. So Embiid's at 30 minutes a game, roughly, and still taking about 16 shots. I think Embiid probably needs to be 18, 19, maybe even 20 shots a game. I think he's that good. 23 points per game is nothing to sneeze at. But if he's supposed to be an MVP type candidate, like how I predicted, at least he would be, he probably needs to be at 27 points per game. You know what I mean? Somewhere in that mark with his 12, 13 rebounds, you know, 3 assists, 2 blocks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That can't come from the amount of shot attempts he's getting currently. So they're spreading it around, you know, to their credit. And that's not a knock, because you want to be able to have some diversity in your offense, so to speak. But I think there just needs to be more of a focal point to play inside out through Embiid. And that can open up things for the outside guys, because Harris can shoot it. You're right. Richardson can shoot it. Even Horford can shoot it from outside if you're playing through Embiid, and he can get those guys some easy looks, especially when he's being doubled and even sometimes triple teamed. I think the other part of it, too, is Simmons just being a more willing shooter, and not necessarily that. And I think everyone says shooting and mean, oh, he's got to shoot threes and he's got to shoot. No, I think it's just getting to the rim and you know, and trying to and get baskets. 10 shots a game for Simmons. It's not even so much, hey, we're not shooting enough threes. He's only taking 10 shots a game. So he's not driving enough and trying to finish through contact or over people or around people. To me, I think those two guys just need to be more aggressive offensively. And while I don't disparage trying to spread it around some, I just feel like those are your lead horses, and they should be kind of the focal points of what you try to do. And everybody else can fit around that offensively. Defensively, they'll be fine. You know, they're top 5, top 6 right now in that category. But offense is where they need to improve a little bit.
All right, so let me just ask you this, and I think I want to do this through the course of the year, since we're doing kind of interim report, you know, style type thing. First quarter, who is your, you know, who do you have slated as your valedictorian for the first quarter mark of the NBA season in the Eastern Conference and Western Conference? I don't want to do the NBA altogether in general.
To me, I think the valedictorian is going to be the Milwaukee Bucks, just by virtue of, you know, obviously their record as well too. Mm-hmm. And I think the salutatorian are the Lakers, while they're just now coming off a 10-game winning streak, you know, losing at home to Dallas, you know, by roughly 20 points or whatever. I think Milwaukee, after a couple intriguing losses, especially the one to Miami, and then even to Boston as well too, they've figured that out. And then even without Chris Middleton for, I think it was like eight games or so, Dante DiVincenzo came in there and played really well. Giannis is actually averaging better stats than he did in his MVP season last year. To me, Milwaukee, I think, is right now ascended as the proverbial threat to the crown. Although we haven't seen the Clippers quite hit their stride with Kawhi and Paul George just yet, but the quarter poll right now, I think Milwaukee's been the best team in the NBA.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think the valedictorian for Milwaukee, the valedictorian is Milwaukee. I will say the salutatorian to me would be the Toronto Raptors. I'm very impressed with the fact that Toronto has been as good as they've been. And Nick Nurse has done a fabulous job getting these guys to still play at a high level.
Yeah, without Lowry, without Ibaka.
Exactly. So the fact that they are, 14-4 as we're recording this podcast, to me, I just find that very impressive. But I agree with you. There, you didn't think that there was another level. Like here is another Super Saiyan level going on with Giannis and the way that he's attacking his competition. My man is on Brawly status right about now. The way that he's acting, and I would fear anybody who continues to try and just deny him where he believes his place is in the NBA right now among one of the most dominant players in the game.
Well, I'm gonna jump into your point here, even like in kind of siding with Toronto. As we're recording, they're almost up 40 on Utah right now, midway through the second quarter, toward the end of the second quarter right now. This team has just Nick Nurse is a great coach. This is a great team. They have amazing player development. Look at the guys that they've worked on and brought through their G League. Siakam is a proof positive of that. Van Vliet is proof positive of that. Even now, Chris Boucher, they got Ron Hollis-Jefferson off, basically off the street. Nobody wanted him in the NBA last year, and now he's coming in and he's playing great minutes. This team just they find the right pieces and parts together. Nurse makes it work, and this is without Lowry and Ibaka for a good portion of the middle part of the season thus far. Ibaka came back as we're recording today. Lowry is probably due back later in the week. But now I think they really feel like they have the confidence where they don't have to play those guys a ton of minutes. This team, everybody's going to be willing to contribute. And I think you'll start to see some of those minutes really even out. And that's even with Gasol not really playing great basketball at all. So Toronto, I think, is a great case for a team that deserves a lot more credit. And they probably be one of our breakdown segments moving forward.
Most definitely. All right. And so real quickly for my Western Conference, valedictorian, I agree with you, Los Angeles Lakers. They have just come out of the gate, like gangbusters. My salutatorian, though, I'm going to give it to the Dallas Mavericks. And I say this because this is a team that I think is going to sneak up on people before it's all said and done. It's interesting. I could have chosen the Houston Rockets, obviously, because of the way James Harden is playing right now. I could clearly be talking about the Los Angeles Clippers because, now we're the tandem of Leonard and George is there, and, they're going to be one of the best teams defensively, no question. But you look at what Luka Doncic is doing with that basketball team, and he's doing it while Kristaps Porzingis is still, up and down, up and down. Once that tandem gets themselves together and the rest of those role players, continues to keep doing what they're doing, they're going to listen. There's really going to only be two teams, I feel like, coming out of the Southwest Division. And dare I say, it may actually be the Dallas Mavericks is going to be that other team. Right. So at least for right now, the fact that they're 12-6 and they're only a game off the track from the Houston Rockets as we record, I'm just really impressed with the Dallas Mavericks. I think that they should get that nod. Denver Nuggets, they're 13-4 is nothing to sneeze at, but they've not impressed me so far this year. They're winning games, but they're not impressing me with the way that they win their games. And until they do what they showed us last year, I gotta wait and see. So maybe by the time we get to the halfway mark, we come back and revisit this question. I could be talking about the Denver Nuggets being, that team that's, at a salutatorian status right now to be legitimate threats to a team like the Los Angeles Lakers, or maybe even the Los Angeles Clippers. But, it's just interesting that the Dallas Mavericks have played as well as they've played, and Doncic to me is a more valuable MVP discussion than LeBron James right now, which sounds very crazy. But if you look at what he's been doing, it's either Harden or Doncic at this quarter mark of the NBA season.
I think those are some strong words. Just to get a ruling from our listeners as well too. I think who's our linguistic fans out there? I think that's Matt D. Trying to figure it out, because I'm pretty sure salutatorian, not salutatorian. We got to get a ruling on that from the general public out there. But in general, but when it comes to LeBron,
Big Sal, we'll call him Big. We'll call it Big Salutatorian. There we go.
That's fine. But we can meet in the middle. But I think it's a four-horse race. So if you're not looking at Giannis, you got to be looking at LeBron. You got to be looking at Luka Doncic, and you got to be looking at James Harden. I don't think I can discredit any of those guys. Every one of those have strong cases when it comes to the MVP here at the quarter pole right now. But I do like that. You said Dallas 13-6, beating LeBron James at home, and ending their winning streak. Luka and the Mavs played them great early in the season in Dallas, a game that went to overtime. That was one of the games of the week by many people. Some people called it the game of the year so far as well too. That was a great battle and a great duel. To see the Mavs come out now and beat them, like I said, and that winning streak is huge. And Dallas is definitely to be reckoned with. The one thing I'll say about Denver is I agree. While their record is impressive, the way they've won maybe isn't. But maybe that's the reason we should be scared, because they haven't played great basketball.
They haven't found it yet. Yeah, and they are capable of it.
Yeah, and they're still and Jokic has been terrible. He's been terrible. And I know overall numbers are like, but compared to what he was supposed to be and coming into this year, and the fact that he's, I think it's 2-3 straight games under double-digit scoring, like your MVP can never have games like that. Like that just can't be life. But Denver definitely has another level to get to. So I think, they'll be right there when all is said and done.
All right. Well, there you have it. We've done the quarter mark of the NBA season, and obviously there's a lot going on. I can't get it linguistically correct, but that's all right. We still got the rest of the season for me to get my verbiage on point. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warrenshaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA.
Big style.
And this was the breakdown linguistically. Time now for the drop. Callie Warrenshaw, Baseline NBA podcast. And our topic for the drop: what in the heck is going on in the ATL? The Atlanta Hawks. This is a basketball team that, listen, a lot of people said that this team this season would be expected to take a leap forward. It looks like out of all the players on that roster, only one team decided to take a step forward, and it sounds like it looked like it's Trae Young. With some of the gaudy numbers that he's putting up offensively. But if you were to tell me that someone is averaging well over 30-something points per game, to have a basketball team right now that's at 4-16 at the bottom of the Southeast Division, never mind that they're not even the third best team in the Southeast Division, their record's similar to the Golden State Warriors, who absolutely have no one, with the exception of Draymond Green on his best days, when he's really up for it, as the same record is among one of the worst teams in the NBA. Something ain't right. Something don't smell right. Something don't feel right. I don't know, man. We might have to get T.I., to come in and have a discussion with some of these guys like he does with his Atlanta Falcons. But right now, things ain't all good in Atlanta, Shaw.
Sad, really sad. And, this is a team that I was hopeful for. And I think it was split down the middle. A lot of people saw or predicted marked improvement from this Atlanta Hawks team and being very cautious, like not this year, maybe next year. But it's obviously than they were last year. But in terms of making the playoffs, a little egregious to think that they could make it this year. And it turns out those seem to be completely right. Obviously, John Collins with the drug suspension, getting 25 games does not help matters at all for this team. But they have problems bigger than John Collins right now. They are last in terms of net rating. In terms of that's how many points they get beat by on a regular basis. That's at a -11. That's worse than the Golden State Warriors. And the Warriors are a much worse team talent-wise. But obviously that Houston loss, where they gave up 60 points in 3 quarters to James Harden, is probably skewing that number slightly, but not by much. They're definitely one of the worst teams in the NBA right now, despite Trae Young's remarkable statistics and the number he's putting up. The rest of the team just can't seem to get it together. They're 27th in the offensive rating, 29th in overall defensive rating. And while Jabari Parker's had somewhat of a resurgence and has played well in lieu of Collins not being there, they just can't seem to get anything right, and they sure as hell cannot stop anybody. Alex Len is a shell of himself, and that's not even his former's that good. So they have some big problems when it comes to stopping guys, defending the three, and getting out there on a regular basis.
While I'm impressed with Trae Young's all-around game, this is exactly the reason why I think people needed to kind of pump the brakes about trying to draw the analogies that he is like Steph Curry. there are intangibles right now that Trae Young just does not possess just yet that I think would have warranted the idea for those conversations to be had, because then this Atlanta Hawks team would not be where they are right now. Again, I think that the biggest struggle that this team truly has is, can this team be better with Trae Young as the player he is, or can Trae Young make these guys better as the player that he wants to be? And a lot of that comes down to what Coach Lloyd Pierce is going to have to instill in some of these guys. You know, there comes a point when you have a great player and he goes out and does great things, but it just does not have an effect on what the rest of the team is doing. And maybe part of that is because they're just standing there watching him be great and are not attributing or not helping to add to making everything about what he's doing great. And part of that greatness is getting W's. And this team just is not good enough at getting W's. You know, what makes it worse now, to your point, Shaw, what compounds it is that they're not just losing basketball games because they just don't know how to win. They're losing basketball games in the way where we're looking at these guys and saying, you guys really shouldn't even be playing in the NBA right now, with the exception of Trae Young. You know? That to me is the part that's scary, is that the way that these guys are performing, you have to wonder if whether or not most of these guys will still be playing in the NBA before season's end.
Well, before season's end, I think they'll ride this out. This start has been pretty bad. It's atrocious, you know, to say the very, very least. Can Collins come back December 23rd and have this team make a pseudo run, you know, for a 7 or 8 seed? Maybe, maybe not. Do they want
But
to?
let me ask you this question.
Let me ask you this question. I think they don't want to give up.
Sure, before you finish your thought, let me ask you this question. Did losing John Collins really take everything out of whack with this basketball team? Like, you know how sometimes when a player gets lost, then you have to start shifting players around, and there's some of them are playing out of their positions, or you know you're demanding or asking them to do more than what they're capable of doing. Did you ever sense that when they lost John? I didn't think that really was the case, because I thought that the talent, the depth of what they had, even though they weren't going to get the kind of points that they got from Collins, I still thought that they had enough depth that they could put bodies out there. They can at least hold their own and look competitive. It almost looks like, yes, John Collins is more important not being on that team than if they lost Trae Young to an injury and he wasn't on that team.
Well, no, they can't function without either one of those guys, to be brutally honest.
Okay.
You know, like I said, they are the dynamic duo that makes everything work for them. And, you know, without one, they just can't do it. And again, while Jabari Parker's had a nice season, forget Jabari Parker's only 24 years old. But he can't do some of the things that Collins was doing, especially when it comes to being a plus rebounder, you know, and some of those assets. It's just his overall tenacity there. But they're also relying on a bunch of young guys, you know, and then you're looking at Reddish and you're looking at DeAndre Hunter, and even Kevin Huerter, who's also missed pretty much the entire season. I think he's played like 6 or 7 games. They just have been so hurt that they just haven't been able to really find a rotation that they can stick with. And Lloyd Pierce is struggling. And he was a lot of people's pick, not mine per se, why they expect Atlanta to be better. But Pierce's pick was the pick for a lot of people for Coach of the Year. You know what I mean? And just because they saw what he could potentially do with this Atlanta team, especially with the young guys. They're just not getting Allen Crabbe back, so we'll see what he brings to this roster, especially when it comes to scoring from the outside, giving them another threat alongside Trae Young. But in general, this team is really struggling because of the injuries and the lack of ability to really stop people defensively and that front court. You know, they got to address that center situation. But it does beg to question here now. What do they do? Do they just kind of continue this path and try to continue to develop? And maybe that's all they can do. Maybe that's all the NBA and the season and the schedule will allow them to take place. Or, you know, do they really make a run at this thing and try to get these guys some playoff experience? And I think that'll be interesting. One thing that I will say, though, is remember this Atlanta Hawks team is a great situation for next year. Only $33 million in committed salary. The Evan Turners, the Chandler Parsons, the Allen Crabbs, all those guys will come off the books. Alex Len comes off the books. Bembry comes off the books, they'll have to re-up and sign Collins, obviously, but they can make a run at a guy like Brandon Ingram from New Orleans. I think would be a great addition to what they're maybe trying to do in a young situation as well, too. So I think Atlanta's going to be a market, especially if they can show some positive and marked improvement the rest of this way. It can be attractive to some upcoming free agents in a pretty slow free agent class in this 2020 summer.
Well, I'm just looking at the here and now, and the here and now, makes me feel like we got to revamp our conversation come halfway point about, where this team might wind up being by season's end. And I never thought that we would have to do that because I didn't think that this team would struggle as badly as they do. Again, it's only a quarter mark of the season when we're talking about Atlanta, but I did not expect this team to be as horrifically bad as they've been. They're not historically bad, but they are horrifically bad. And it's just weird that we're talking about it in this space because with a guy like Trae Young, who I think we like to liken to the whole Steph Curry experience, again, I just go back to what I said originally. This is why Steph Curry is so important, to the NBA and is important to his franchise and organization. Because even as their team struggles, the impact that he has while he is on that basketball court does help elevate and increase the probability they can win some of these basketball games. And right now, you're not going to get that from Trae Young, or at least you're not seeing that. So the numbers, while they're gaudy and they're great, and he's on the highlights like almost every single night, and he'll hoist, Player of the Week nominations and all that, this, that, and the third. That's all well and good. But if it is not translating to wins in a town, in a city that has always been berepped and berated as not being a true NBA city, right, where people really appreciate the fact that they have a professional NBA basketball franchise there and a team that has not won a championship. It's going to be a while before we actually see the fruits of this, experience of having Trae Young on this roster. It's going to take place. And I think right now, this early outset of the season and what we're seeing sets that narrative back immensely.
Yeah, it does. It does. And I think maybe to your point, right there, then that's why we need to see them make a push no matter what it looks like, no matter where it lands them overall in the Eastern Conference this year. You want to see them get better, be competitive, and try to get wins. And again, if the wins don't come, are they in every game? Can they improve on this -11 in terms of net rating and, be more competitive to incoming free agents who might say, I can go there and make a difference and turn this thing around and make Atlanta a basketball town because Trae Young is exciting. John Collins is a good basketball player. Kevin Huerter is a guy who can shoot the basketball as well, too. Hunter can defend. And Reddish is, by some people's account, maybe the best prospect in this year's draft. While I don't share that opinion, there are people who have said that. So this Atlanta team has to be thinking about their overall future. Despite their 4-14 start or whatever it is, they've got to be better and then figure out a way how they can attract players to make this a destination city and potentially a franchise that compete in years to come.
All right. Well, there you have it, man. Can the Atlanta Hawks turn things around? That'll be the big question. Hopefully they do, because we would love to see the Southeastern Division be very competitive. But right now, there are a couple of teams that are already pulling away from them early. And it's going to be an uphill climb for this team. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. And this was The Drop.
Coast to coast.
Time to go coast to coast, discussing the news in the association. You ready to rock and roll, Mr. Shaw?
Absolutely, man. Let's ride.
All right. Word is out in Memphis. Ja Morant, week to week with a back injury. Kid's been really exciting, man. And like I said, clearly this type of setback will push him, as far as his run for Rookie of the Year. But he has definitely not disappointed the Memphis faithful in their selection of him in the draft.
Yeah, he's a great basketball player. I just hope, week to week means maybe 1 or 2 at the most. In the meantime, Tyus Jones will fill in pretty nicely. They got a nice win on the road at Minnesota over the weekend without Ja. But definitely they want to get him back out there so that chemistry can continue to build with him and Jaren Jackson Jr. and the rest of the young guys on that team.
Sucks is such an injury-riddled season for the rookies. It'll be interesting how they're going to assess, by season's end, who's going to wind up taking that award. Out in Boston, the Celtics getting kind of tired of the Kyrie Irving questions. I'll be honest with you. I was already tired of it the moment that they got knocked out of the playoffs. But, what do I know?
Well, it feeds into your great conversations about the media and where we're at today. ESPN, had that game on. It was kind of a revenge Wednesday. Celtics at the Nets, or the Nets at the Celtics, and then you had AD coming back from LA to New Orleans, and just Kyrie didn't play, and the Boston fans kind of getting into it. But the players themselves, especially Marcus Smart, Jason Tatum, guys like that, they're just tired of hearing about it. They want to focus on the guys that are here right now in Boston and not worry about what was last year with Kyrie Irving.
Yeah, and I would just hope that the Boston, medium as well, also get off of this, because it does an absolute disservice for the players that are currently there that want to forget about this situation. And I think in order to elevate the Celtics to where we think that they're capable of being, they got to get beyond what obviously did not work in Boston. And you know what? Focus the questions to Danny Ainge and leave it away from the players. Finally, Jabari Parker. He says he wouldn't rule a return to Milwaukee, given the fact that he's going through what he's going through in Atlanta. I wonder what's prompted that thought process.
Jabari, he's just kind of keeping 100. He wish he could have stayed.
Yeah, he's having an LMA moment. Yeah.
But it just didn't work out. You couldn't keep Giannis, obviously, and the anchors Middleton to make those three work. Especially Jabari is not a natural three, and Giannis is more of a four in this environment. So unless Parker was willing to come off the bench, and maybe he would be now, it just wasn't going to work out. But Jabari definitely lamenting his time in Milwaukee, and he put up some nice numbers against the Bucks team, albeit in another loss to Atlanta.
Yeah, but hey, we all love to reminisce, right? Everybody is taking that trip down memory lane. So, why deprive Jabari of that moment himself? Awesome show this week, Shaw. A lot of stuff we got into, good topics of conversation, and, definitely some points for us to bring up as we move forward, things that we're looking forward to as we start, furthering, getting closer to the halfway mark of the NBA season and close to the NBA trade deadline.
Yeah, man, and trades are going to be coming, pretty soon, at least rumors, December 15th. So we'll be talking about that in the coming weeks for sure. But this one was definitely a fun show.
Most definitely. Once again, we appreciate you and yours for hopping on board with us this week for the Baseline. Callie, Warren, Shaw, we appreciate you guys. We do. And we'll catch up with you next time.
Holiday tips and fun facts from Paul, Kristen, and Dexter at Total Wine & More.
There's something celebratory about Bubbles. Our ridiculous selection of champagne and sparkling wines will make the holidays pop.
Who couldn't use a friendly wine elf? I can help you find the perfect bottle at just the right price.
Deep frying a turkey this year? A rich and earthy Chateau Neuf de Pop would make an interesting pairing.
Whether you're entertaining or just bringing the wine, we'd love to share our always low prices and ridiculous selection with you this holiday. Now offering same-day delivery at TotalWine.com. Cheers!
Right now, when you come in and switch to T-Mobile, you get the amazing iPhone 11 Pro on us with iPhone XS trade-in.
Aren't these mountains majestic? Joe, are you even looking?
I'm posting these amazing pics I took with my iPhone 11 Pro. It has 3 cameras.
Whoa, those pics are amazing. And you have service too?
T-Mobile. Their newest signal goes farther than ever before.
Then you can look up whether these are bear tracks, right?
Or we could just run.
Come to a T-Mobile store today and get iPhone 11 Pro on us with iPhone XS trade-in. And right now, get 4 lines for just $30 a line with AutoPay. Switch today.
Contact us if you cancel or credits may stop and full price due, plus taxes and fees via 24 monthly credits for well-qualified customers with qualifying service and finance agreement. 0 down with trade-in plus $31.25 times 24 months. Pre-credit price $999.99. 0% APR while supplies last.